There's a voice in your head that tells you you're going to mess up. It tells you not to try, that you're too much or not enough, or that you should know better. And the strange part is, it sounds like you. My name is Sarah, and I don't think it is. It's there when you're about to send something you worked hard on. When you make a small mistake and hear, immediately, classic. When you look in the mirror on the wrong morning. It shows up in the specific situations it knows best, and it always has the same tone. Certain, quiet, like it doesn't even need to argue because it knows it's right. What makes it convincing isn't its volume. It's that it doesn't feel like something happening to you. It feels like something you're thinking. Like the most clear-eyed part of your brain cutting through and telling you the truth about yourself. And because it sounds like truth, you treat it like truth. You rearrange your behavior around it. You pull back before you've tried. You apologize before anyone has complained. You work twice as hard to outrun a verdict that keeps resetting to guilty. Here's what I want to offer you today. The voice being familiar doesn't make it yours, and being loud doesn't make it accurate. What I want to walk through is where it actually came from. Here's the anatomy of it. The inner critic isn't a neutral evaluation system that fires at random. It has a personality. It has phrases it returns to. A tone that's consistent. A specific sharpness that shows up the same way every time, whether the stakes are high or low. And that consistency is the clue. Because your own thinking shifts depending on how rested you are, how safe you feel, what's going on. But the inner critic sounds the same no matter what. That steadiness means it was set a long time ago. Here's a simple way to understand what's happening. Imagine someone recorded a judgment about you years back, and your brain has been playing it back ever since. Not as a memory, as live commentary. The recording sounds present tense. It sounds like your own internal voice. But the content was written by someone else. What triggers it tells you a lot about where it came from. It doesn't fire randomly. It fires in specific categories: making mistakes, wanting something, being seen, asking for too much, taking up space. Those categories map back to specific environments where the original standard was set. Your brain learned which situations required extra vigilance. It is still applying that vigilance now every time you step into one of them. The voice sounds internal. The origin wasn't. Think about who taught you early on to be hard on yourself. It doesn't have to be someone who was cruel. It might have been someone who held you to high standards because they were afraid for your future. A parent who corrected you often because they wanted you to succeed. A teacher who singled you out because they thought pressure built character. Someone who loved you and also, consistently, communicated that you weren't quite there yet. You didn't choose to absorb it. When you're small, the standards of the people around you don't stay outside you. They move inside. They become the way you evaluate yourself when no one is watching. That isn't a flaw in how you developed. It is exactly what was supposed to happen. Children take in the voices of the people closest to them. That's how they learn what the world expects. The problem is the world changed. The person isn't in the room anymore. Their standard doesn't govern what happens to you now. But the voice kept running. It became so fluent in your internal language, so woven into how you think, that it stopped being identifiable as separate from you. And here's the paradox that sits at the center of it. The voice you trust most when things go wrong is the one with the least actual claim to authority. It was never a reflection of your worth. It was someone else's fear, spoken in your direction, long enough that your brain made it a rule. Let yourself sit with what that means. Every time that voice fired and you believed it, you either drove yourself harder to meet a standard you didn't set, or you stopped yourself from trying something that might have mattered. You shaped real decisions around a judgment that was never yours, so that is worth acknowledging, not with blame, with honesty about what it cost. What it took to keep going with that voice running in the background is not a small thing. To show up anyway, try anyway, make things anyway, against a constant internal verdict saying you probably shouldn't. That is not a sign of someone who is broken. That is a sign of someone who kept moving in conditions that made moving hard. The voice won't go quiet overnight. But there is a difference between hearing something and deciding it is true. The moment you can recognize it as the old recording and not your own conclusion, that is the moment it starts to lose some of its hold. It was never your voice. You just learned it so well that you forgot it wasn't. When you hear that inner critic, does it remind you of anyone? You don't have to name them. Drop a word in the comments if something came to mind. And if this one helped something click, sharing it with someone who needs it is the best thing you can do.